I mean, it's big. It's big. Lucifer is coming to an end after what, seven years?
It will be, yeah, it'll be about 7 years. So 7 years. Gosh, yeah. This will be season 6, but season 5 was split into 2. So technically, this is season 7.
just in case people weren't
Just
confused enough. Yeah,
exactly.
It's been a big part of your life. I guess the big question is, are you going to miss it?
Oh, for sure. But I kind of feel like I was ready to finish as well. So it's weird because I was talking about this earlier that 3 years ago the show was cancelled after season 3, and at that point I was absolutely devastated and gutted because I felt like we hadn't really finished our story. It was like we're doing a play, and then it was the interval, and then the play got closed down, and it was like, well, people were watching that, and there was a very sort of unsatisfying feeling about that. But now we've been able to tell the beginning, middle, and end of our story. I feel really happy and satisfied, and so I will undoubtedly miss it. But also, the people that I love from the show and my friends that I've made on the show and whatever, they're like lifers now. It's been a huge chunk of my life. So I don't worry that I'm not going to see people again. And I will be a little bit sad to say goodbye to the character, but it was time.
I mean, you'll undoubtedly heard this a lot over the last 7 years, but what a cool character to play. I mean, when you first read for it, I'm assuming you went to an audition. Yeah,
I did.
I was, because it's not unheard of that people just go, "You're the guy. We don't need to see anything." But you auditioned for it then. Do you remember that audition?
I do vividly. It was weird because I'd done a show in the States that has been like sort of my breaking the ice, and people have really sort of gotten to know who I was. Certainly, that were making stuff, not necessarily audiences. And then so I knew that I had a good chance of the things that I was going in for. But I remember getting the script for Lucifer, and it was by about the 3rd page. I was just like, I just love this character. I love the way it's written. It makes me laugh out loud. It's so different to all the other stuff I'm reading, and I felt there was an opportunity there to do something with it that was very different and unique. And so I kind of I took some big swings in my choices, because he wasn't written as British. He wasn't written as any of these like things I've sort of added over the years. But I just was like, I think this is the opportunity to kind of make a mark. So I took some really big swings and maybe some big choices, and I just kind of fingers crossed. And I went in to meet Len Wiseman, who was directing the pilot. And it's so funny, when you're in those situations, there was people in before me, and I remember everyone took about maybe 3 to 5 minutes of in and out. And I remember I'd been in there for maybe about 10 minutes, and we were still going, and Len was giving me notes and stuff. And I thought, well, maybe I've got a bit of purchase here. Maybe we might be onto something. And literally about 24 hours later, Len had basically said, "I want you to do it. We have to convince the studio and all that." But once I knew I had him on side, I felt like that maybe the job was going to be mine, and it just played out that way. But I didn't really realize how big a job it was until we started shooting the pilot, basically.
So you went for British. What were the other big swings that you took?
I think the heightened nature of his sensibilities. When I read it for the first time, there was a cadence to his voice, and it's sort of for me it only worked that it was sort of delivered in a sort of rapid fire way. He didn't think and muse about these things that he said. He just said them, and he said a lot in a short space of time. So it was all about pace and being on top of the lines. And it reminded me a lot of being in a sort of Oscar Wilde play or a Noel Coward play, where these witticisms that these characters have, they just kind of come out in droves, in endless kind of sentences. And so that was something that I was going for, which doesn't really tie in with a modern US TV show, and how people stylistically, how people go for things. So certainly that. And then I think just sort of not going down the typical alpha male route. I wanted there to be a little bit of ambiguity about who he was, and a lot of people commented that Lucifer was quite camp, when I first started out. And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, that's again, it kind of like, it ticks those boxes, or not tick, it kind of resonated in my head about certain characters like Algie and Oscar, you know, importance of being earnest and things like that. There is a kind of like ambiguity about the sexuality of these characters. And that was something we tied in with Lucifer just being an open sexual creature, basically, and all of those things. But all of these almost like theatrical choices that I made in my head. And I just committed to it. And thankfully, they went for the sort of big character in a grounded world version that I was kind of looking for.
So, and it was just you and Len Wiseman in that audition, because I've heard that quite often, compared to British auditions, and American network shows, they literally have everyone from the network in the room. Like, you've got the lawyers in there.
Yeah. My first experience of doing a screen test in America was exactly that. It was like, I may as well have been doing like a small theatre job. There was about, it was in a room on Fox Studios, and I'd done my first audition in front of about 4 people, and then they called me back, and it was like what they call the studio test. And everyone who represents the studio, and there was, like you say, it's about 40 people in this room, of like all these chairs out, and yeah, it was really kind of very, very different experience than what I'd ever had before. But thankfully, over the years, they've tweaked that a little bit, and it's more that you have your creatives in the room, like, you know, your director definitely, and maybe a couple of other people, and then they record it, and then they show it afterwards, and if the creative is on your side, then you'll get time to work it as well. It's not just like do it once and that's it. It's like, let's work this, let's make sure we've got the best version of it before we present it to the people we want to present it to. Right. So yeah, it was a lot less stressful, that version of doing it. And
you can do an American accent, as has been proved. Yeah,
I've just been in a show playing, this American Doctor, and so I was ready for that. And I remember like attacking the material with an American accent, and I just, after like 5 minutes, just was like, this guy just sounds like a dick. There's something about it, doing it in an American accent, that just doesn't work. And there's something hugely charming and forgivable for Americans to hear Brits. They just find it so kind of like, you could be saying anything you like, but because you say it in a British accent, they're kind of immediately charmed by it. And so I kind of thought, if we're going to play this deplorable character, we've got to make him likable somehow. And that was the way in. And
did you feel like you'd nailed it? Like when you walked out? Because sometimes it's that you just know that you've hit everything. And I mean, obviously, Len calling you 24 hours later was a clue. But but before then, were you like, in that 24 hours, were you like, I think I got that?
I knew it had gone well, because there was a casting director who had called, like after that session had finished, called my management team to say that went really well. You know, Len's very keen. We've got some more people to see, blah, blah, blah. So I sort of knew definitely that it had gone pretty well, but also I had, like I said to you, like I knew that I'd been in there for longer than 5 minutes. So I thought, you know, you're saying there's a chance. It was kind of that sort of feeling. But yeah, it felt like I knew going into it, it sort of was in my sweet spot as well. And that gave me a lot of confidence going in.